Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about the first look trailer that came out for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. If you haven't seen it already, I'll include a link to it in the description down below. But I think this was just a nice, first look. Obviously, we're picking up immediately where Spider-Verse ended with Gwen contacting Miles. And I think it's so neat because immediately we're because if I remember correctly, there was a lot more Miles and Gwen stuff that they wanted to do in the first movie, in a romantic sense. It was still there to some extent, but not as much as they wanted to, because I think they cut it out just because there might not have just been enough room with everything else going on in the movie. It would have just been a little too much. So they're going to be expanding upon that dynamic and relationship between them, because obviously it's a thing of Miles has a crush on her, but also it seems like she might feel the same way. But like I said, we didn't have a lot of time with just so many spider people we were jumping back and forth between. But I think it's kind of cute that she's like, oh, this is your drawing? She's like, oh no. And then there's a picture of her and he's just kind of embarrassed. He's like, no, I'm grounded. And she's like, oh, but is Spider-Man grounded? And I think that's such a sweet moment right there. But also it's just right, he has to really, we spent some time with it, balancing the two last movie, but now that he has fully become his own Spider-Man, it's going to come into full swing about balancing both lives, the struggle of all spider people, but obviously we got that gorgeous and beautiful look of him crossing into different places across the multiverse, and he's running into Miguel. Now, I don't know whether Miguel is attacking him, whether they're adversarial in this regard, because not less it's a thing of oh, maybe Miles is quote-unquote responsible for some stuff going wild. I mean, to be fair, Gwen reached out to him, so whatever it is, it must have been a pretty big deal. But like I said, just from what we saw, it seemed like Miguel was attacking him. It didn't seem like it was necessary. Maybe he was helping him, but it looked like it was more adversarial in that moment, which really quickly is just interesting because, well, you got Gwen, who's voiced by Haley Steinfeld, who's now Kate Bishop in the MCU, and you've also got Oscar Isaac, whose voices Miguel. I keep saying that so certainly, but I'm pretty sure that Miguel O'Hara is 2099's real name, if I remember correctly. But Oscar Isaac voices him, and he's Moon Knight in the MCU, so it's just they're both all up in the Marvel family in different facets. I just think it's so fascinating, but it looks so beautiful, just the shifting between the different animation styles and stuff. Because obviously, you get it to some extent when we're getting each Spider-Person's backstory. Let's run this one more time. But also, you got it a little bit there, but obviously the main thing is, as each Spider-Person was animated very differently, so I think we're going to get a lot more of location animation styles being a bit different, and that's going to be the cool thing to see, is that every time they go to a different dimensional world, what the animation style looks like, and it looks so dope, the transitioning just between the two we saw. Okay, what universe is it? What Spider-Man exists in that world? Because I don't even know what the antagonist situation is going to be like in this movie, because I've read nothing about it. This is my first thing looking or really seeing it. The only thing I heard about was like I said, the Miles and Gwen stuff. That's about it, but that was about the original movie, and I think I'd heard stuff about them implementing that more in this one, but so I'm going into this knowing nothing, and there's probably a lot of questions I have, or things that information is probably out there I don't want to know. I'm just just free flowing my thoughts about what we saw, but I think it is such an interesting notion to know that the movie is a part one. I was like, oh, that's fascinating, because that's something I didn't hear that they were doing it, but maybe there's just so much story here, we have to split it up into multiple parts, which is interesting. I mean, 'cause I guess you could think of Infinity War and Endgame are like that. They're technically a part one and part two, which is kind of interesting. So I guess it's something in a similar vein in that regard. But I guess we're just kind of doing the thing I think of is that episode of Spider-Man the Animated Series where Peter joined up with all the Spider. We already kind of got that last movie, obviously, with all the Spider-Men, all the Spider people from all the different worlds coming together. But I think it's going to be on a grander scale, because we're going to be moving, like the title implies, across the multiverse. Because everyone came to Miles' world. And now it's his chance to actually travel across the multiverse. What other spider people were we going to get? What other iterations of characters will he run into? He's going to end up running into a version of his mom and dad who probably aren't together in a different reality. And I would assume for story purposes, he's obviously going to run into his uncle. Now, probably a world where his uncle never became the Prowler. I was blanking on his name for a second there. And so his uncle's probably still alive, or maybe there's a world where his uncle stayed alive, kept going, and became like a major big-time supervillain type of thing. I don't know. I think a lot of those emotional strings are going to be pulled for Miles when he's in other worlds, because it's probably going to be a thing of, right, cool, I'm in this situation, I'm lost across the multiverse, and will there be any way for me to get back to my home when everything, maybe it's going to be a thing of like the multiverse is collapsing, so they have to jump from world to world as other worlds are disappearing type of thing. That'd definitely be interesting to see what ends up being the crux of this story. I'm excited. I think this was a nice first look, you know, giving us a little taste without, you know, telling us really much of anything, but just let you see like the beautiful art style and everything. And I'm just like, I'm so excited for just the story, the animation, the music. I know it's going to be stellar because it was all stellar with the first one. So I'm so excited for not just this one, but obviously the next one we're going to be getting after this one as well. But obviously, these are just some of my thoughts. I'd love to get to know yours in the comments down below. What are some things you expect to see from this movie? What are some things you want to see from the movie? As I've thrown out there, like, we don't know what villains are going to pop up. Are there any particular villains you're looking forward to making their appearances, or alternate versions of villains that maybe you're familiar with the comic books? Like, oh, maybe they could do this version of this character that maybe they would never do in the MCU that's Spider-Man tied or related. I'm so curious to see. Especially because I brought it up too, like, what other Spider people will we see? I would assume everyone we met in the last movie is going to pop up here. What about the little pointing meme at the end about Oscar Isaac and that Spider-Man? Like, is he going to meet that, like, 60s Spider-Man? Is he going to take part in this as well? I hope so, just because that'd be another animation style they could, like, play around with. So I hope we get him as well. Like, I'm just so excited. Like I said, just let me know your thoughts. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.